My daughter drained my college fund. She didn't know I was about to inherit everything. I stared at the bank statement for the third time, my hands trembling as the numbers burned into my retinas. $847.33. That's all that remained of the $47,000 I'd scraped together over 15 years of overtime shifts, skipped meals, and driving cars held together with prayer and duct tape. The college fund I'd started when Emma was 4, after her mother walked out on us both, was essentially gone. Dad, you're home early. Emma's voice rang out from upstairs, bright and cheerful, completely oblivious to the financial devastation spread across our kitchen table. I could hear her friends laughing in her room, probably admiring whatever new designer bag or expensive makeup she bought with my sacrifice. My phone buzzed. Another notification from the bank about a withdrawal. $340 at some boutique in the city center yesterday while I was pulling a double shift at the plant. She texted me that morning asking for money for textbooks. I'd been so proud of her for being responsible, for thinking ahead about her educational needs. What a fool I'd been. The first withdrawal that caught my attention was back in March. $200 she claimed was for a laptop that died right before finals. I'd been hesitant to give her the account information, but she'd been crying, stressed about her grades, and I couldn't bear to see her struggle. I worked an extra weekend to make up for it, telling myself it was an investment in her future. Then came April. Emergency car repairs after a fender bender. $800. May brought up mandatory summer course she absolutely had to take. $1,500. June was a summer job that required appropriate professional attire. Another $600. I believed every word because she was my daughter, my only family, and because I'd raised her to be better than this. Or so I thought. The real kicker was discovering she'd been authorized on the account since her 18th birthday last year. I'd done it so she could access money for legitimate college expenses while I was working. Instead, she'd been treating it like her personal shopping fund for 11 months. Emma. I called up the stairs, my voice sharper than intended. 1 SEC. I heard whispered conversations, muffled laughter, then the sound of her bedroom door closing. Footsteps bounded down the stairs, and she appeared in the doorway wearing a sweater I'd never seen before. Cashmere, by the look of it. Probably cost more than I made in a week. What's up? She grabbed an apple from the counter, so casual, so innocent. At 19, she still had that face that could make me forget why I was angry. Heart-shaped with my late mother's green eyes and her mother's golden hair. She'd always been able to wrap me around her little finger. Not today. We need to talk about your college fund. I kept my voice level, controlled. Something flickered across her face, so brief I almost missed it. Fear. Guilt. Then it was gone, replaced by confused concern. What about it? Is everything okay? The performance was flawless. Wide eyes, slightly parted lips, the perfect picture of innocent worry. I slid the bank statement across the table. You tell me. Emma picked up the paper, and I watched her face carefully. This was my daughter, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while I worked night shifts from home, who made me Father's Day cards out of construction paper and told me I was her hero. The same daughter who had just stolen her own future. Emma's eyes darted across the numbers, and I watched the color drain from her face in real time. Her mouth opened and closed twice before any words came out. Dad, I can explain. Can you? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Because I'd really love to hear how you explain spending $46,000 of your college money in 11 months. She set the statement down with shaking hands. It's not what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like my daughter has been lying to me for almost a year while I worked myself into the ground to provide for her future. My voice was still calm, but I could feel the anger building like pressure in a boiler. It looks like every sob story about emergencies and requirements was complete bullshit. Don't say that word, she snapped, then immediately caught herself. Emma had always hated when I cursed, said it made me sound common. Now I wondered where she'd picked up that particular piece of snobbery. Which word, Emma? Bullshit? Or lying? Tears welled up in her eyes, the same tactic that had worked for 19 years. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. College is different now. Everyone has nice things, and I just wanted to fit in. I was going to pay it back, I swear. Pay it back with what? Your part-time job at the campus bookstore that pays $9 an hour. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my banking app. Let's see, $400 at Nordstrom 2 weeks ago. $280 at Sephora last Tuesday. Oh, here's a good one, $650 at some place called Luminous Day Spa on the same day you texted me crying about needing money for a calculus tutor. Each item hit her like a physical blow. She wrapped her arms around herself, and for a moment, she looked like the scared little girl who used to have nightmares about her mom never coming back. I know it looks bad. Bad? I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the linoleum. Emma, I've been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch for 2 years to save money for your education. I'm driving a 15-year-old truck with 200,000 miles because I couldn't afford payments on anything newer. I haven't bought myself new clothes in God knows how long. I gestured to my faded work shirt, the one with the small hole near the collar that I kept meaning to throw away but couldn't afford to replace. Meanwhile, you're upstairs with your friends showing off whatever new expensive garbage you bought with my sacrifice. I never asked you to sacrifice. The words exploded out of her, sharp and cruel. I never asked you to work all those extra hours or drive that stupid truck. That was your choice. The silence that followed was deafening. Upstairs, I could hear her friends' muffled voices and wondered how much of this they were hearing. Wondered if Emma had bragged to them about having a father stupid enough to give her access to thousands of dollars. You're right, I said quietly. You never asked. I did it because I loved you. Because I wanted to give you opportunities one never had. Because I thought I was raising a daughter who understood the value of hard work and honesty. Emma's face crumpled, and she reached for me. Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll make it right, I promise. I'll get a better job, How? The question stopped her cold. Tell me exactly how you're going to make this right, Emma. Because your freshman year starts in 6 weeks, and you have exactly $847 to your name. The reality of what she'd done was finally sinking in, and I could see the panic setting in behind her eyes. I'll take out student loans, Emma said, her voice getting smaller. Lots of people do that. It's normal. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about this conversation. Do you have any idea what that means? You're looking at $200,000 in debt minimum for the pre-med program at state. That's a mortgage payment for the next 20 years of your life. People manage, she whispered, but I could see the math starting to hit her. Emma had always been good with numbers, honor roll student, 1480 on her SATs. She knew exactly what kind of financial prison she'd just built for herself. Yeah, they managed by not buying $400 sweaters and $200 face creams. I picked up my phone again. Should we go through more of these charges? Because I've got 11 months of receipts here, and I'm starting to see some interesting patterns. Her friend's laughter drifted down from upstairs again, and Emma flinched like she'd been slapped. Madison's parents give her $2,000 a month, she said suddenly. Ashley's dad bought her a car for her birthday, a brand new Lexus. Do you know what it's like being the scholarship kid surrounded by people who've never had to think about money? So you decided to pretend you were one of them with my money. I just wanted to feel normal. Do you know what it's like having friends who spend more on lunch than we spend on groceries? Her voice cracked. I was tired of being the girl who couldn't afford anything, who had to skip spring break because we're too poor. The word poor hung in the air between us like a slap. Emma had never used that word before. I'd made sure she never felt poor, even when we were living paycheck to paycheck. We're not poor, I said firmly. We're working class. There's a difference. And there's no shame in either. Tell that to Madison's parents when they took us all to dinner at Le Bernardine and I had to pretend I wasn't adding up the prices in my head. Emma's composure finally shattered completely. Tell that to Ashley when she's talking about her family's house in the Hamptons. Tell that to. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. So your solution was to lie and steal so you could keep up with people who are apparently terrible friends if they make you feel bad about your background? Emma's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, and I saw the screen light up with notifications, Instagram, Snapchat, text messages. Probably her friends upstairs wondering what was taking so long. They're not terrible, she mumbled. They don't understand. Understand what? That money doesn't grow on trees. That some of us actually have to work for what we have. I shook my head. Emma, I grew up in foster care. You want to talk about not fitting in? I wore the same 3 shirts to high school for 2 years. But I didn't steal from people who cared about me. That hit home. Emma's face went white, and she sank into one of our mismatched kitchen chairs, the set I bought at a garage sale when she was 8 because it was all I could afford. I never thought of it as stealing, she said quietly. What else would you call it? I thought you'd understand. I thought when I got my degree and started making good money, I could pay you back with interest, and we'd laugh about this someday. The naive arrogance of that statement took my breath away. You thought wrong. Another buzz from her phone. This time, she ignored it. What happens now? Emma asked, and for the first time since this conversation started, she sounded like my little girl again. Before I could answer her question, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a Boston area code. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Mr. David Chin. Speaking. This is Margaret Whitfield from Whitfield, Barnes & Associates. We're the estate attorneys for your late aunt, Eleanor Chin Morrison. I've been trying to reach you for several days. My blood went cold. Aunt Eleanor. I hadn't spoken to her in over 20 years, not since the massive family blowout when Emma's mother left. Eleanor had made it crystal clear back then that she wanted nothing to do with me or my common lifestyle choices. I'm sorry, did you say late aunt? Emma looked up sharply at the change in my tone. Yes, I'm afraid Ms. Chin Morrison passed away 3 weeks ago. We've been attempting to contact you regarding her will. You're listed as the primary beneficiary. The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. Eleanor had been worth millions, old money from her first husband's shipping fortune, smart investments from her second husband's tech company. But she disowned our entire side of the family decades ago. I think there might be some mistake, I managed. No mistake, Mr. Chin. Could you come to our offices this week to discuss the estate details? There are several time-sensitive matters we need to address. Emma was staring at me now, her tears forgotten. She could only hear my side of the conversation, but she'd caught enough to know something significant was happening. Can you give me a rough idea of what we're talking about here? I asked, turning away from Emma's curious gaze. The liquid assets alone are approximately $4.7 million. Then there's the primary residence in Beacon Hill valued at $2.8 million, the summer house on Martha's Vineyard, the investment portfolio, and several other properties. Conservatively, we're looking at an estate worth just over $12 million. The phone slipped in my suddenly sweaty palm. $12 million. More money than I could make in 10 lifetimes of overtime shifts and double weekends. Mr. Chin. Are you there? Yes. When can we meet? Would Thursday at 2 p.m. work? Our offices are at. Thursday's perfect. I grabbed a pen and scribbled down the address, my hand shaking so badly the numbers looked like chicken scratch. After I hung up, the kitchen fell silent except for the hum of our ancient refrigerator and the sound of Emma's friends still chatting upstairs. Emma was looking at me like I'd sprouted a second head. Dad? What was that about? I stared at my daughter, this girl who had just stolen her future because she was embarrassed about our modest life, and felt something shift inside my chest. All those years of sacrifice. All those nights I'd lain awake worrying about college costs and whether I'd saved enough. All the guilt about not being able to give her the life her wealthy friends took for granted. And now, 3 weeks after Emma had drained our last savings, I was suddenly worth more than all of her friends' families combined. Your Aunt Eleanor died, I said slowly. Great Aunt Eleanor. The one who hated us. Apparently she didn't hate us as much as we thought. Emma frowned, clearly not understanding the significance yet. She'd only met Eleanor twice, both times when Emma was very young. All she really knew were the stories, how Eleanor had called me a disappointment to the family name when she found out I was raising Emma alone while working factory jobs. Are you okay? Emma asked softly. I know you two didn't get along, but still. The concern in her voice made my heart ache. This was still my daughter, still the girl who used to check on me when I had nightmares about losing her too. But she was also the young woman who had just spent a year systematically lying to my face. And now everything had changed. I looked at the bank statement still lying on the table, then at Emma in her expensive cashmere sweater, then at my phone with the lawyer's number scrawled on my palm. We'll continue this conversation later, I said finally. You should go back to your friends. Emma hesitated at the kitchen doorway, clearly torn between curiosity about the phone call and relief at escaping our confrontation. Dad, are you sure you're okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. If only she knew how accurate that assessment was. Eleanor had been a ghost to me for 20 years, and now she was reaching from beyond the grave to completely upend everything I thought I knew about my life. I'm fine. Go. After Emma's footsteps disappeared up the stairs, I sat alone with the magnitude of what had just happened. $12 million. The number felt abstract, like something that happened to other people in movies or lottery commercials. I pulled out my phone and Googled a law firm. Whitfield, Barnes & Associates was real, prestigious, with offices in a Back Bay building that probably cost more per square foot than I made in a year. I walked to our living room and really looked at it for the first time in months. The couch I'd bought secondhand 8 years ago, reupholstered once when Emma was in middle school. The coffee table with ring stains from years of late-night homework sessions and TV dinners. The 32-inch television I'd gotten on Black Friday clearance in 2019 and considered a major splurge. Emma's laughter drifted down from upstairs, mixing with her friends' voices. I caught fragments of their conversation, something about a party this weekend, designer shoes, someone named Brandon who drove a BMW his parents bought him. My phone buzzed with a text from my supervisor at the plant. Dave, can you cover Martinez's shift Saturday? Double time. 3 days ago, that text would have been a blessing. Double time meant an extra $320, enough to cover our electric bill and maybe take Emma out for dinner somewhere nicer than Applebee's. Now it felt surreal. In less than a week, I'd go from calculating whether I could afford name brand cereal to being worth more than most small towns' entire annual budgets. But Emma didn't know that. Emma was upstairs with friends, probably panicking internally about how she was going to explain to them that her free ride was over. That she'd have to get a real job, apply for financial aid, maybe even transfer to a community college to save money. The vindictive part of me, the part that had been growing stronger since I'd first seen those bank statements, whispered that she deserved exactly that reality check. She'd made her choices. She'd lied, stolen, and then had the audacity to call me common when confronted with the consequences. My phone rang again. This time it was my brother Marcus in Seattle. Hey, Dave. You sitting down? Why does everyone keep asking me that today? Because I just got off the phone with some lawyer in Boston about Eleanor. Did they call you too? I rubbed my temples. Yeah, just hung up actually. Marcus, what the hell is going on? She wrote us all off decades ago. I know, right? Apparently she's been following our lives more closely than we thought. The lawyer said she kept tabs on the whole family through some private investigator. Knew about Emma's college plans, knew about you working double shifts, knew about my divorce last year. That information hit me like ice water. Eleanor had been watching us. Judging us, maybe, or perhaps reassessing the opinions she'd formed 20 years ago when emotions were running high and pride was wounded on all sides. There's more, Marcus continued. I'm not the primary beneficiary. You are. I'm getting the beach house and some investments, but the bulk of it, the main house, most of the money, it's all yours, Dave. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. The lawyer wouldn't say much over the phone, but apparently there's a letter. Eleanor wrote letters for each of us, explaining her decisions. You'll get yours when you meet with them Thursday. After Marcus hung up, I found myself staring at Emma's school photos lined up on the mantel. Kindergarten through senior year, 18 pictures chronicling her transformation from gap-toothed little girl to the poised young woman upstairs. In every single photo, she was smiling that same radiant smile that had gotten her out of trouble more times than I could count. When had I stopped being enough for her? When had my second-hand furniture and careful budgeting become something to be ashamed of rather than proud of? When had my daughter decided that lying and stealing were acceptable prices to pay for fitting in with people who apparently valued her so little that she felt the need to pretend to be someone else entirely? The sound of car doors slamming outside interrupted my thoughts. Through the window, I watched Emma's friends pile into a silver Mercedes, Madison's car, no doubt. Emma appeared in the doorway, car keys in hand. I'm going out with the girls. We'll probably grab dinner and see a movie. With what money? The question came out sharper than I'd intended. Emma flushed. Madison's treating. Of course she is. I turned back to the window. Be home by midnight. Dad. She took a step into the room. About earlier, I really am sorry. I know I messed up, and I want to make it right. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still the most important person in my world. But trust, once broken, didn't just snap back into place with an apology. And now I had decisions to make that she couldn't even begin to imagine. We'll figure it out, I said finally. Emma hesitated like she wanted to say more, then headed for the door. I love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. The house felt impossibly quiet after she left. I was alone with the bank statements, the lawyer's phone number, and the knowledge that in less than 72 hours, my entire world would be different. The question was, would Emma's be different too? I spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling and doing math I'd never imagined I'd need to do. $12 million. Even conservatively invested, that was enough to generate more income per year than I'd made in the last decade combined. Emma could attend any college she wanted, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, without worrying about a single tuition payment. She could graduate debt-free, travel the world, start her own business. Hell, she could buy Madison's parents' house if she wanted to. But she didn't know that. And the longer I lay there in the darkness, the more I found myself questioning whether she should. Emma came home at 12:47 a.m., 17 minutes late, but I'd given up enforcing that rule sometime around her 18th birthday. I heard her trying to be quiet on the stairs, the way she used to when she'd sneak down for midnight snacks as a kid. Some habits never change. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd taken a day off work, told my supervisor I had a family emergency, which wasn't entirely a lie. The train ride to Boston gave me 2 hours to think, which turned out to be 2 hours too many. By the time I reached the gleaming office building in Back Bay, I'd mentally spent Eleanor's money 17 different ways and taken it away from Emma just as many times. The law offices of Whitfield, Barnes and Associates occupied the entire 32nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered views of Boston Harbor. The receptionist, a perfectly polished woman in her 30s, greeted me with the kind of smile reserved for people who could afford the hourly rates here. Mr. Chin. Ms. Whitfield will see you now. Margaret Whitfield was nothing like I'd expected. Probably 65, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She stood when I entered her office, extending a firm handshake. Please, sit. I'm sorry for your loss, though I understand you and Eleanor weren't close in recent years. That's putting it mildly, I said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I haven't spoken to her since 1998. Yes, she mentioned that in her letter. Margaret pulled out a thick manila folder. Before we go over the estate details, she specifically requested that I give you this. She handed me an envelope with my name written in Eleanor's precise handwriting, a handwriting I remembered from birthday cards that had stopped coming when Emma was 5. Inside was 3 pages of cream-colored stationery, covered in the same careful script. David. Asterisk, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you're probably shocked to find yourself in a lawyer's office discussing my money. I imagine you expected Harold's children to inherit everything, or perhaps one of my various charities. You certainly didn't expect the nephew I called a disappointment to become my primary heir, asterisk. I owe you an explanation, and more importantly, an apology. Asterisk 24 years ago, when Sarah left you and baby Emma, I said terrible things. I called you irresponsible for getting involved with someone beneath your potential. I suggested you give Emma up for adoption and start fresh. I believed that growing up poor would damage her, that you couldn't provide the kind of life she deserved without a mother and without family money, asterisk. I was wrong about everything. Asterisk, for the past 15 years, I've employed a private investigator, not to intrude on your privacy, but to understand the man you became and the father you chose to be. I know about the double shifts. I know about the second-hand clothes and the careful budgeting. I know you've never missed one of Emma's school events, despite working 60-hour weeks. I know you taught yourself algebra to help with her homework and learned to braid hair by watching YouTube videos, asterisk. Most importantly, I know that Emma has grown into a remarkable young woman despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges you faced together. Asterisk, David, you succeeded where I failed. I had money, position, every advantage imaginable, and I raised children who spoke to me twice a year out of obligation. You had nothing but determination and love, and you raised a daughter who clearly adores you, asterisk. Asterisk, the money comes with no strings attached. It's not a reward or a test, it's an acknowledgement that I was wrong to judge your choices, and an apology for the support I should have offered years ago. Use it however you see fit. Move somewhere warmer. Travel the world. Buy Emma everything she's ever wanted. Or keep working at the plant and let it sit in the bank, that's your choice, asterisk. Asterisk, there is one piece of advice I feel compelled to offer, though you're free to ignore it. Money changes people, but not always in the ways we expect. Be careful who you tell, and be careful how quickly you change your circumstances. Sometimes the most generous thing we can do for the people we love is let them learn to stand on their own first, asterisk. With my deepest regrets and newfound respect. Eleanor. Asterisk P.S. There's a 1987 Bordeaux in the wine cellar at the Beacon Hill house. Open it when Emma graduates. I was saving it for something special, and I can't think of anything more special than celebrating the achievement of a young woman you raised right, asterisk. My hands were shaking by the time I finished reading. Margaret Whitfield sat quietly, giving me time to process. Outside her windows, Boston Harbor stretched gray and endless under the cloudy sky. She really had someone watching us? I asked finally. For 15 years. Nothing invasive, public records, social media, the occasional observation of public events. She wanted to know how you were both doing. Margaret opened another folder. She was particularly impressed when Emma made honor roll while you were working nights. The investigator noted that you'd rearranged your entire schedule to attend her academic award ceremony. I remembered that night. Emma had been so proud, clutching her certificate and insisting we take pictures by every trophy case in the school. I'd been exhausted from pulling a double shift, but seeing her smile had made every minute worth it. What happens now? I asked. Now we begin the process of transferring everything to you. The liquid assets should be accessible within 2 weeks. The properties will take a bit longer, there are inspections, appraisals, various legal formalities. But by Christmas, you'll have full control of the entire estate. Margaret slid a document across her desk. This is a preliminary inventory. The Beacon Hill house alone is quite remarkable. Eleanor had exquisite taste and spared no expense on renovations. The Martha's Vineyard property is currently being managed by a caretaking service. There's also a small apartment building in Cambridge that generates about $180,000 annually in rental income. I stared at the numbers, each one representing a level of wealth I'd never even dreamed about. Emma would never have to worry about money again. She could pursue her medical degree at Harvard if she wanted, maybe specialize in something exotic and expensive like neurosurgery or pediatric oncology. Assuming, of course, that I decided to tell her about any of this. There's no timeline for any decisions, Margaret said, as if reading my thoughts. The money isn't going anywhere. Take whatever time you need to adjust to this new reality. The train ride home passed in a blur of suburban landscapes and swirling thoughts. By the time I walked through our front door, I'd made exactly zero progress toward figuring out what to do next. The house felt different somehow, smaller, but not in a bad way. Like looking at a childhood bedroom years later and being surprised by how cozy it seemed rather than cramped. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, surrounded by papers and what looked like college financial aid forms. Hey Dad. How was your day? She looked up with a tentative smile. You said you had some kind of appointment. Just some paperwork stuff. I set my jacket on the back of my chair, the same chair I'd sat in 3 days ago when our biggest problem was a drained college fund. What's all this? Financial aid applications. Student loan paperwork. Her voice was steady, but I could see the stress around her eyes. Turns out there are deadlines for everything, and I'm behind on most of them. She'd been working on this all day. Taking responsibility, facing the consequences of her choices, trying to fix what she'd broken. It was exactly what I'd wanted to see from her, exactly the kind of mature response that proved she was still the daughter I'd raised. So why did watching her struggle feel so much harder than I'd expected? I've been thinking about what you said, Emma continued, not looking up from her laptop screen. About the value of hard work and honesty. You're right, I lost sight of what was important. She pulled out a notebook filled with her careful handwriting. I calculated everything I spent that wasn't actually for school. It's $31,847. I know that sounds impossible to pay back on a bookstore salary, but I have a plan. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of pride. Emma had always been thorough when she set her mind to something. I talked to my advisor about transferring to community college for my prerequisites. That would save about $40,000 over 2 years. And I applied for a weekend job at that new restaurant downtown. They're hiring servers, and Sarah Chen from my chemistry class says she makes $200 a night in tips on Saturdays. She finally looked up at me, and I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen since she was little, genuine determination mixed with vulnerability. I also wrote letters to Madison and Ashley. Her voice got smaller. I told them I couldn't afford to keep up with their lifestyle anymore. That I needed to focus on school and work. How did that go? I asked, settling into my chair across from her. Emma's laugh was bitter. About how you'd expect. Madison said I was being unnecessarily dramatic and that her dad could probably get me a job at his company if I was really that worried about money. Ashley just stopped responding to my texts. The casual cruelty of 19-year-olds never ceased to amaze me. These girls had been Emma's closest friends for 2 years, and they discarded her the moment she couldn't serve as their financial equal. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Losing friends hurt, even when they turned out to be the wrong friends. Don't be. You were right, real friends wouldn't make me feel bad about my background. She gestured at the paperwork spread across the table. This is better. Scarier, but better. At least it's honest. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret Whitfield, * preliminary paperwork is ready for your signature. Liquid assets could be available as early as next Tuesday if you'd like to expedite the process, *. Next Tuesday. 5 days from now, I could wake up with more money in my bank account than most people saw in a lifetime. I could walk into the kitchen and tell Emma to tear up all those financial aid applications, that her money worries were over forever. But watching her work through the consequences of her choices, seeing her take responsibility and make hard decisions about her friendships and her future, this was what I'd been trying to teach her for 19 years. Character building didn't happen when life was easy. Dad? Emma was looking at me with concern. You keep checking your phone. Is everything okay? You've been acting strange since that call yesterday. Just work stuff, I said, quickly putting the phone face down on the table. Tell me more about this restaurant job. It's called Marcello's, that new Italian place on 5th Street. The manager said if I can handle weekend shifts and some weeknight closing shifts, I could probably make $800 a week. Combined with the bookstore job, that's almost $1,400 a month. She'd done the math, projected her income, calculated her expenses. This was the Emma I remembered from high school, the one who created elaborate budget spreadsheets for our family vacation to Myrtle Beach and researched hotel prices for 6 weeks to save us $200. And you'd be okay with that schedule? That's a lot of work on top of classes. Lots of people work their way through college, Dad. You worked your way through everything. Her voice carried a note of something I hadn't heard before, not just love or gratitude, but respect. I should have been doing this all along instead of taking the easy way out. Margaret's text seemed to burn through the phone screen. Easy ways out were apparently a family specialty this week. There's something else, Emma said, pulling out another sheet of paper. I want to pay you back for the money I took. All of it. I know it'll take years, but I calculated that if I pay you $400 a month starting next summer, I can have it all repaid by the time I'm 27. She slid the paper across to me, a payment schedule, meticulously planned, with interest calculated at 3% annually. Emma, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Her voice was firm. I stole from you, Dad. From the man who raised me and sacrificed everything for my future. There have to be consequences for that, real ones, or I'll never really learn from this. Outside, I heard the rumble of our neighbor's motorcycle starting up, probably heading to his night shift at the hospital. Normal sounds from my normal neighborhood, where people worked hard and made ends meet and taught their children that actions had consequences. In 5 days, I could change everything. Emma would never have to serve tables or apply for student loans or carefully calculate whether she could afford both textbooks and groceries in the same month. But she'd also never have to learn that she was strong enough to fix her own mistakes. That weekend, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to the rich side of town to see how Emma's former friends lived. Beacon Hill wasn't far from Eleanor's neighborhood, according to the address Margaret had given me, and I found myself curious about the world my daughter had been so desperate to join. Madison's house was exactly what I'd imagined, sprawling colonial with a circular driveway, perfectly manicured lawn, and a 3-car garage that probably cost more than my entire mortgage. The silver Mercedes was parked outside next to a black BMW and what looked like a brand new Range Rover. I sat in my 15-year-old truck across the street, feeling like a creep but unable to look away. Through the front windows, I could see glimpses of the party inside, teenagers in expensive clothes, laughing and drinking from red Solo cups. Emma should have been in there. 3 weeks ago, she would have been. My phone rang. Emma. Dad, I got the job at Marcello's. I start training Tuesday night. Her voice was breathless with excitement. The manager said if I do well the first month, she'll give me prime shifts on Fridays too. That's great, sweetheart. Through Madison's window, I watched a group of kids playing some kind of drinking game around what looked like a marble dining table. You sure you can handle school and 2 jobs? I have to handle it. Besides, Sarah Chen works 3 jobs and she's still pulling a 3.8 GPA. Emma paused. Dad, where are you? It sounds like you're in the car. I started my truck, suddenly feeling ridiculous for stalking my daughter's former social circle. Just running errands. I'll be home soon. Actually, I'm not home either. I'm at the library working on scholarship applications. Did you know there's a $5,000 grant specifically for first-generation college students whose parents work in manufacturing? You technically qualify since you never finished your degree. The irony hit me like a punch to the chest. Emma was spending her Saturday night researching grants for poor kids while I sat outside her rich friend's house, knowing I could write her a check for a full Harvard education without even denting Eleanor's inheritance. Emma, about your college plans. I know what you're going to say, and I've thought about it too. Community college really is the smart choice for the first 2 years. Professor Martinez said if I keep my GPA above 3.5, I can transfer to state as a junior and still graduate on time. She had it all figured out. A responsible, mature plan that would save money and teach her the value of working toward her goals. Everything a good parent should want for their child. Plus, Emma continued, Sarah's older sister did the same thing and said it actually helped her study habits. Smaller class sizes, more personal attention from professors. She's at Johns Hopkins now for her master's degree. Monday morning, Margaret Whitfield called with an update that changed everything. David, we've discovered some additional assets. Eleanor apparently owns several investment accounts under different names. The estate is actually worth closer to 18 million, not 12. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. 18 million. I know it's overwhelming. There's also a safety deposit box we haven't opened yet. The bank requires your presence since you're the executor. Would Wednesday work? That afternoon, Emma came home from her first day at community college with applications for 3 more scholarships and a study group schedule that would have impressed a Fortune 500 CEO. She'd color-coded everything. Look at this, she said, spreading papers across our kitchen table with the enthusiasm she used to reserve for Christmas morning. If I get even 2 of these scholarships, I can afford to take a full course load and only work weekends. She was so proud, so determined. So completely unaware that her father could buy the entire community college without thinking twice. There's one more thing, Emma said, pulling out an envelope. I wrote you a letter. You don't have to read it now, but I wanted you to know how I really feel about everything that happened. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten in her careful script. As I read, my heart broke and swelled simultaneously. She wrote about shame, about learning the difference between wanting things and needing them, about finally understanding the sacrifices I'd made. But the line that destroyed me was near the end. Asterisk, I used to be embarrassed that we weren't rich like my friends' families. Now I'm proud that you taught me to work for what I want. I'm proud to be your daughter, Dad. I always should have been, asterisk. That's when I realized the terrible truth. Eleanor's money hadn't just given me the power to solve Emma's problems. It had given me the power to rob her of the chance to solve them herself. The safety deposit box contained documents that made 18 million feel like pocket change. Jesus Christ, I whispered, staring at the stock certificate spread across the bank's private viewing room table. Margaret Whitfield sat beside me, equally stunned. I had no idea, she said, adjusting her glasses to read the fine print. These are original Microsoft stocks from 1987. Apple from 1984. Amazon from 1997. She pulled out a calculator, her fingers flying across the keys. David, if these certificates are legitimate and haven't been sold. The numbers she showed me didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. $47 million, she said quietly. That's just the tech stocks. There are also Disney certificates here from 1971, McDonald's from 1973. She trailed off, continuing her calculations. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, asterisk just aced my first biology exam. Professor said I'm in the top 5% of the class. Working a double at Marcello's tonight to celebrate. Weird how much I actually love having something to work toward, asterisk. The contrast was nauseating. Emma was celebrating making $120 in tips while I sat in a marble-floored bank room discovering I was worth more than some small country's GDP. The final total, Margaret said, setting down her calculator with shaking hands, assuming current market values and including all properties and liquid assets, is approximately $63 million. 63 million. The number bounced around my skull like a pinball, refusing to land anywhere that made sense. I thought about Emma's color-coded scholarship applications, her careful budget calculations, her plan to pay me back $400 a month for 8 years. There's one more thing, Margaret said, pulling out a smaller envelope from the bottom of the box. Another letter from Eleanor, with instructions that it only be given to you after the full estate value was determined. My hands shook as I opened it. Eleanor's handwriting seemed different this time, shakier, like she'd been sick when she wrote it. David. Asterisk, if you're reading this, Margaret has shown you the full scope of what you've inherited. I imagine you're feeling overwhelmed, possibly sick to your stomach. Good. That means you understand the responsibility this represents, asterisk. Asterisk, I've been watching Emma more closely these past few months. She's made some poor choices with your college fund, yes, I know about that too. The question isn't whether she made mistakes, but what she'll learn from them, asterisk. Asterisk, you now have enough money to erase every consequence of her actions and prevent her from ever facing real challenges again. I'm begging you, don't, asterisk. Asterisk, I spent my life cushioning my children from every difficulty, solving their problems before they could learn to solve them themselves. Harold Jr. is 45 and still calls me when his credit card bill is too high. Patricia has never held a job for more than 6 months because she's never had to, asterisk. Asterisk, don't make my mistakes, David. Emma is strong enough to climb out of the hole she dug herself. But only if you let her, asterisk. Asterisk, the money will be there when she's truly earned the right to it, maybe when she graduates, maybe when she's proven she can succeed on her own merits. That's your choice to make. But please, for both your sakes, don't rob her of the chance to discover who she really is when things are hard. Asterisk. Use the money wisely, but use your judgment even more wisely. Eleanor. I drove home in a daze, Eleanor's words echoing in my head. The house looked different again, not smaller or larger, but somehow more precious. This was where Emma had learned to ride a bike in the hallway during a snowstorm. Where she built blanket forts and practiced violin recitals and cried over her first heartbreak. Emma's car wasn't in the driveway, she was probably at the library between her classes and her shift at the restaurant. I found a note on the kitchen counter, asterisk Dad, made you dinner, it's in the fridge. Working until close tonight, but I'll try to be quiet when I get home. Also, I think I figured out how to afford the microbiology textbook without breaking our grocery budget. Love you, asterisk. Our grocery budget. She was still thinking about our money as shared, still considering how her choices affected the family finances. Despite having every reason to be angry with me for not being able to provide the lifestyle her friends had, she was protecting what little we had left. My phone rang. Marcus. Dave, please tell me you're sitting down for this conversation. I'm sitting. What now? I just met with my attorney about Eleanor's will. That beach house she left me. It's not just a beach house. It's 12 acres on Puget Sound with a main house, guest cottage, and private dock. The property taxes alone are $40,000 a year. His voice cracked. Dave, I'm a middle school teacher. I make $48,000 a year. I can't afford to own this place, but I can't afford to not own it either. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here we were, two middle-aged men who'd spent our entire lives worrying about money, suddenly drowning in more wealth than we'd ever imagined. And somehow, it felt more like a burden than a blessing. There's something else, Marcus continued. The investigator Eleanor hired. He's been in touch. Apparently, she's been manipulating situations in our lives for years. Remember when your supervisor offered you that promotion to day shift right after Emma started high school? That wasn't coincidence. Eleanor anonymously donated money to upgrade the plant's equipment, specifically requesting that single fathers be given priority for the new positions. My blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying our aunt has been playing puppet master for over a decade. My ex-wife's sudden willingness to accept a lower alimony payment. Eleanor quietly paid the difference. Your truck that mysteriously never failed inspection despite being held together with wishes and prayer. Eleanor's been paying your mechanic to fix things and bill them as routine maintenance covered under extended warranty. The room spun. How many of my proudest moments, providing for Emma, keeping us afloat through the hardest years, had been secretly subsidized by a woman I thought hated me? Marcus, if Emma finds out about any of this, she won't from me. But Dave, you need to think carefully about what you're going to do. This kind of money doesn't just change your life. It changes everyone around you, whether they know about it or not. After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen that Eleanor had probably been subsidizing for years, and tried to figure out who I really was. The self-reliant single father I believed myself to be, or the charity case who'd been too proud to notice he was being helped. Emma's key turned in the lock at 11:47 p.m. She crept through the front door, clearly trying not to wake me, then stopped short when she saw me sitting at the table. Dad? Why are you still up? Are you okay? She looked exhausted but happy, her cheeks flushed from the cold and her hair escaping from its ponytail. She smelled like garlic and basil from the restaurant, and she was counting a small stack of bills, her tips from the night. Good shift? I asked. Amazing shift. $140 in 5 hours. She grinned, waving the money. And Mrs. Patterson, you remember her from the hardware store, she was there with her book club and told everyone I was that sweet chin girl whose father works so hard. I got 3 requests to babysit this weekend. Pride and shame warred in my chest. Here was my daughter, glowing with accomplishment over earning in 5 hours what I could now make in interest every 30 seconds. Emma, sit down. We need to talk. Emma's smile faded as she took in my expression. She set her tips on the counter and slid into the chair across from me, the same chair where she'd sat just days ago while I confronted her about the drained college fund. You're scaring me, Dad. What's wrong? I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times during the 3 hours I'd been sitting here, but now that she was in front of me, exhausted from working a double shift, proud of her $140 in tips, all my carefully planned words evaporated. The phone call I got the other day, about your great-aunt Eleanor. There's more to it than I told you. Emma frowned, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. More how? I thought you said she just died and left you something small. She left me everything, Emma. Her entire estate. I pulled out the preliminary documents Margaret had given me, my hands shaking slightly. Houses, investments, bank accounts. A lot of money. Okay. Emma leaned forward, clearly not grasping the magnitude yet. Like, enough to help with my college costs. The innocent hope in her voice nearly broke me. She was still thinking in terms of thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands. Still calculating whether we could afford the good textbooks versus the used ones. Emma, she left me $63 million. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emma's mouth opened, closed, then opened again without any sound coming out. She blinked rapidly, the way she used to when she was little and trying to process something too big for her understanding. 63. She shook her head. Dad, that's not a real number. People like us don't inherit $63 million. People like us just did. I slid the bank documents across the table. I found out Tuesday. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Emma stared at the papers without picking them up, as if they might bite her. This is real. You're not having some kind of breakdown. It's real. I've met with lawyers, seen the bank statements, verified everything. By next week, I'll have access to more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. She finally picked up the documents, her eyes scanning the numbers. I watched her face change as the reality sank in, confusion giving way to shock, then something that looked almost like panic. Dad, do you know what this means? Her voice was barely a whisper. I've been working 16-hour days and applying for scholarships, and you've been sitting on $63 million. The accusation in her tone caught me off guard. Emma, I just found out. When exactly did you just find out? She was flipping through the pages now, reading dates and signatures. Because this is dated Tuesday, and today is Friday. You've known for 3 days while I've been breaking my back at that restaurant. I hadn't expected anger. Confusion, yes. Excitement, probably. But not this sharp edge of betrayal that made her sound older than her 19 years. I wanted to think it through first. This kind of money changes everything. Changes everything. Emma stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. Dad, I've spent the last week reorganizing my entire life. I broke up with my friends, took a job slinging pasta, enrolled in community college. All good choices, I interrupted. You've been learning responsibility. Learning responsibility? Her voice cracked. I've been learning responsibility while you've been secretly rich. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? She started pacing our small kitchen, her exhaustion forgotten in favor of what was rapidly becoming fury. I wrote you a letter apologizing for taking money from our college fund. I made payment plans to pay you back over 8 years. I calculated grocery budgets down to the penny. Emma, those were important lessons. Lessons? She whirled around to face me. Dad, I spent 5 hours tonight smiling at customers and pretending my feet didn't hurt because I was proud of earning honest money. Mrs. Patterson told her entire book club how hard our family works, and I beamed like an idiot because I thought we were finally doing something right. The pain in her voice was worse than her anger. I stood up, reaching for her, but she stepped back. How long have you been planning to let me suffer through this character-building exercise? Until I graduate? Until I pay back every penny? Until I prove I'm worthy of being your millionaire daughter? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Dad? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you decided to teach me a lesson about money by pretending we didn't have any. Her eyes filled with tears. I trusted you. Even after I screwed up, even after I disappointed you, I trusted that we were in this together. My phone buzzed on the table, a text from Margaret Whitfield about scheduling the property inspections. Emma saw the phone light up and laughed bitterly. Let me guess. Your lawyer. I nodded, and Emma's face crumpled with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. God, Dad. How many people know about this? Your lawyer, Uncle Marcus, am I literally the last person to find out that my life has been a lie? Your life hasn't been a lie. Hasn't it? She grabbed the restaurant schedule taped to our refrigerator and waved it at me. I requested extra shifts for next week because I thought we needed the money. I've been eating ramen for lunch to save $15 a week. I turned down going to Ashley's birthday dinner because I couldn't afford to split a $200 bill, and you let me feel guilty about it. The accusation hit like a physical blow. She was right, I had watched her make sacrifice after sacrifice while sitting on information that could have changed everything. Emma, I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? Having choices. Being able to afford textbooks. Her voice rose with each word. Or were you protecting me from becoming like Madison and Ashley, spoiled rich girls who never learned the value of hard work? The way she said it made it clear she'd figured out my reasoning, and the fact that she understood made it somehow worse. You were learning important lessons about responsibility. Don't. She held up her hand, tears spilling over now. Don't you dare make this about lessons and character building. This is about trust, Dad. This is about you watching me struggle and choosing not to help when you absolutely could have. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from my bank app. The daily interest alone on Eleanor's accounts was $8,400. More than Emma would make in a month at Marcello's. The worst part, Emma continued, her voice breaking, is that I was actually proud of myself. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something right. I thought I was finally becoming the daughter you deserved. You are the daughter I deserve. Am I? Because it seems like the daughter you deserve is one who suffers appropriately for her mistakes while Daddy sits on a fortune and decides when she's learned enough. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How much of our life has been fake, Dad? The overtime shifts, the secondhand clothes, worrying about college costs, was any of that real? The question I'd been dreading finally came out, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. Because Marcus had been right, Eleanor had been manipulating our circumstances for years. How much of my proud self-reliance had been an illusion? The sacrifices were real, I said quietly. I didn't know about Eleanor's help until yesterday. Eleanor's help. Emma's eyes widened. There's more. I told her about the investigator, the anonymous donations, the subsidized truck maintenance. With each revelation, Emma's face got paler and her breathing got shallower. So not only are we secretly rich now, but we've been charity cases this whole time. She sat down heavily, like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Dad, do you understand what this means? Every time I felt proud of us for making ends meet, every time I bragged about how hard you worked to provide for me, it was all fake. It wasn't fake. I did work hard. But we were never actually poor. The words exploded out of her. I spent 2 years feeling ashamed of our lifestyle around my friends, and it turns out we had a secret rich aunt subsidizing us the whole time. I was embarrassed about being working class when we were actually, what are we, Dad? What do you call someone who inherits $63 million? The question hung in the air, unanswered and maybe unanswerable. Because I honestly didn't know what we were anymore. Emma sat in stunned silence for a long moment, staring at the bank documents like they were written in a foreign language. When she finally looked up at me, there was something in her expression I'd never seen before, not just hurt or anger, but a kind of fundamental bewilderment, like she was looking at a stranger. I need to know something, and I need you to tell me the truth, she said, her voice eerily calm. When exactly were you planning to tell me? Give me a specific timeline, Dad. Not vague bullshit about thinking it through. The directness of the question caught me off guard. This wasn't my little girl asking for permission or my teenager testing boundaries. This was a young woman demanding accountability, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe when you graduated. Maybe when you proved you could handle the responsibility. Stop right there. Emma's voice cut through my explanation like ice. Proved I could handle the responsibility. Dad, I'm 19 years old. I made one mistake with money, and your solution was to secretly become a multimillionaire and watch me work myself to exhaustion as penance. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through something. Do you want to know what I did today? I applied for a work-study position in the chemistry lab that pays $12 an hour. I was excited about it. $12 an hour, Dad, and I was proud because it meant I could afford both the good textbooks and maybe, one coffee date per month. The specificity of her pride made my chest ache. $12 an hour. I'd been agonizing over whether to tell her about money that generated more than that per minute. Emma, I was trying to protect. You were trying to control. She set her phone down with deliberate care. You decided I needed to learn humility, so you manufactured poverty while sitting on a fortune. Do you realize how fucked up that is? I flinched at the profanity. Emma never swore, had been raised not to, but apparently tonight was full of firsts. There's something else, she continued, and her tone made my blood run cold. I told Sarah Chen about our situation. About me screwing up the college fund, about you working doubles to make ends meet, about how proud I was to finally understand the value of hard work. My stomach dropped. Emma. Her mom is organizing a fundraiser. The words came out flat, emotionless. The Korean American Community Center is planning a scholarship drive for Emma Chen, the hardworking daughter of a single father who sacrificed everything for her education. They've already raised $3,400. The room tilted sideways. Mrs. Chen and her friends, probably working extra shifts and skipping their own small luxuries to help a family they thought was struggling. All while I sat on enough money to fund scholarships for every kid in the community. Oh, God, I whispered. It gets better, Emma continued, her voice getting harder with each word. They're planning to present it at Sunday dinner this week. In front of 40 people. With a speech about perseverance and community support. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I was planning to cry grateful tears, Dad. I was going to thank them for believing in me. The magnitude of the deception was crushing. It wasn't just about Emma anymore, it was about an entire community rallying around what they thought was a family in need. We have to tell them the truth, I said. Do we? Emma's eyes flashed. Or do we just quietly return the money and let them wonder why the struggling single father's daughter suddenly doesn't need help anymore? I'm sure they'll never figure it out. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our modest neighborhood where most people actually were struggling, actually did work multiple jobs to make ends meet, actually worried about college costs and grocery budgets. 3 days, Dad. You sat on this information for 3 days while I humiliated myself. While you humiliated yourself? The words stung more than they should have. Emma, working hard isn't humiliation. Learning responsibility isn't. Cut the shit, Dad. Her voice was ice cold now, and the profanity hit like a slap. You want to know what humiliation really is? I called Madison yesterday. My blood froze. What? I called her to apologize. To explain why I'd been pulling away from our friend group. Emma turned from the window, and her eyes were red-rimmed but fierce. I told her my family was going through financial difficulties. That I needed to focus on earning money instead of spending it. The room felt like it was closing in around me. Emma, what did she say? She laughed. Emma's voice cracked on the word. She actually laughed and said, Emma, you're being ridiculous. My father looked into your family's situation months ago when we first became friends. Your dad owns 3 investment properties and has been hiding money in offshore accounts for years. The floor dropped out from under me. That's impossible. Is it? Emma pulled out her phone and started reading from what looked like a text message. Mr. Chen has been playing poor to teach his daughter a lesson about money. Everyone knows. My parents think it's either really smart parenting or borderline abusive, depending on how long he keeps it up. I stared at her, my mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Emma, I swear to you, I don't own any properties. I don't have offshore accounts. That's not. Then explain this. She thrust her phone at me, showing a screenshot of what appeared to be a real estate website. 3 properties listed under David Chen, a duplex in Cambridge worth $1.2 million, a condo in downtown Boston valued at $800,000, and a commercial building in Somerville listed at $2.3 million. The photos showed beautiful, expensive properties that I'd never seen before in my life. But there was my name, clear as day, listed as the owner of record. I don't understand, I whispered, scrolling through the listings. These aren't mine. I've never seen these places before. Really? Because according to this, you've owned the Cambridge property since 2019. The condo since 2020. Emma's voice was getting higher, more strained. Dad, if you've been lying about this too. I haven't been lying. The words came out louder than I intended. Emma, I swear on your mother's memory, I have never seen these properties before. Someone is using my name, or there's been a mistake, or... My phone rang. Margaret Whitfield. Don't answer it, Emma said quickly, but I was already swiping to accept. David, I'm sorry to call so late, but we have a problem. Margaret's voice was tense, professional calm cracking around the edges. I've been going through Eleanor's files more thoroughly, and there are some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? I asked, putting the phone on speaker. Emma moved closer, her anger temporarily overshadowed by confusion. Properties purchased in your name over the past 4 years. Bank accounts opened with your social security number. Investment portfolios that show a long history of financial activity that, according to your tax returns, shouldn't exist. Emma and I stared at each other across our small kitchen. Her face had gone from angry to pale to something approaching terror. Margaret, I don't own any properties except this house. I don't have investment portfolios. Someone has been using my identity. That's what I was afraid of. David, it appears Eleanor didn't just have you watched, she's been actively manipulating your financial profile for years. Creating a false prosperity that exists only on paper, but paper that certain people have access to. Emma sank into her chair, her hands shaking. Oh my God. Madison's family thinks we're rich because we actually look rich. On paper. But why? I asked. Why would Eleanor do this? Margaret's sigh was audible through the phone. I'm still piecing it together, but there's another letter. One I wasn't supposed to give you until you'd had time to process the inheritance. But given these circumstances. What does it say? I think you should come in tomorrow morning. Both of you. This is bigger than just an inheritance, David. Your aunt has been orchestrating something complex, and I'm not sure any of us understand what yet. The silence in Margaret's office the next morning was suffocating. Emma sat rigid beside me, still wearing her Marcello's uniform from the night before because she'd refused to go home after our confrontation. She'd slept on Sarah Chen's couch instead, leaving me alone with my guilt and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications from accounts I'd never opened. Margaret spread Eleanor's final letter across her mahogany desk like she was laying out evidence at a crime scene. Her usually perfect composure was cracked around the edges, silver hair slightly mussed as if she'd been running her hands through it. Before I read this, Margaret said carefully, I need you both to understand that Eleanor's estate is currently frozen pending investigation. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit became involved yesterday evening. Emma's sharp intake of breath cut through the room. The FBI. Identity theft on this scale, with this much money involved, crosses into federal territory. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. David, someone has been using your personal information to create what amounts to a shadow financial empire. The properties your daughter found are real, but they were purchased with laundered money and falsified documents. I felt sick. Are we in trouble? Not criminally, no. But this situation is far more complex than a simple inheritance. Margaret picked up Eleanor's letter with gloved hands. She knew exactly what she was doing. The letter was longer than the others, written in Eleanor's shaky handwriting but with an urgency that made my skin crawl. David. Asterisk if Margaret is reading this to you, it means the false identity I created has been discovered. Good. It was meant to be, asterisk. Asterisk for 15 years, I watched you struggle honorably while my son-in-law Richard Morrison built his fortune through increasingly illegal means. He launders money through real estate purchases, using the identities of suitable individuals, people with clean records and no financial sophistication who wouldn't notice their names being used, asterisk. Asterisk you've been his unwitting front for 4 years. Every property you own was purchased with money stolen from pension funds, charity organizations, and elderly investors. Richard needed someone with your exact profile, hardworking, honest, too busy surviving to monitor credit reports or property records, asterisk. Asterisk I couldn't expose him without destroying Patricia, she genuinely doesn't know about his crimes. But I couldn't let him destroy innocent people like you either, asterisk. Asterisk the inheritance is real, David, but it comes with a responsibility. Hidden in the Beacon Hill house basement is evidence of Richard's entire operation, financial records, falsified documents, proof of every crime he's committed using your name and dozens of others, asterisk. Asterisk by the time you read this, Richard will know the estate has been transferred to you. He'll come for those documents, probably offering you money to forget what you've learned. He might threaten you. He will definitely try to manipulate Emma, asterisk. Asterisk don't let him. The FBI contact information is in the sealed envelope Margaret has. They've been building a case for 3 years but needed evidence they could obtain legally. You're their way in, asterisk. Asterisk I'm sorry for making you both targets. But you're the only people I trust to do what's right, even when it's dangerous, asterisk. Asterisk the money is yours regardless of what you choose. But those documents could save hundreds of victims and stop Richard from destroying more lives, asterisk. Asterisk do what you think is right. I finally trust your judgment completely, asterisk. Eleanor. Emma's face had gone chalk white. She made us bait. It appears so, Margaret said grimly. And according to the FBI agent I spoke with this morning, Richard Morrison is very much aware that the estate transferred yesterday. He's been making calls. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, Boston area code. We all stared at it until it stopped ringing. That's the third call this morning, I said. Same number. Margaret nodded. Agent Rodriguez said he'd probably reach out within 24 hours. David, I have to ask, do you want to cooperate with the FBI investigation? Emma leaned forward. What does that mean exactly? It means your father would help them gather evidence against Morrison. Potentially including recorded conversations and supervised meetings. Margaret's tone was carefully neutral. It also means you'd both be under federal protection until Morrison is arrested, which could take weeks or months. Emma looked at me, and for the first time since last night, her anger seemed secondary to something else, fear, maybe, or the weight of understanding that our problems had just gotten infinitely more complicated. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message, asterisk Mr. Chen, this is Richard Morrison. We should discuss your recent inheritance. I believe we have mutual interests. Can you meet me for lunch today? I think you'll find what I have to say very enlightening, asterisk. Margaret read the message over my shoulder and immediately picked up her office phone. Agent Rodriguez. He just made contact. Within 6 hours, our modest kitchen had been transformed into an FBI command center. Agent Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, sat across from me at the same table where I confronted Emma about the college fund just a week ago. Emma perched on the counter, watching federal agents attach recording equipment to my phone with the kind of fascination reserved for car accidents. Morrison is desperate, Rodriguez explained, adjusting the wire under my shirt. Eleanor's death triggered automatic audits on several accounts he thought were permanently hidden. He needs those documents from the Beacon Hill house, and he needs them today. My phone rang exactly at 2 p.m. Morrison's voice was smooth, cultured, everything I'd expected from someone who'd married into Eleanor's social circle. David, I hope Margaret explained the complexity of your inheritance. I'd like to help you navigate some potential legal issues. What kind of legal issues? I kept my voice steady despite the 3 FBI agents listening from our living room. Well, it seems there may have been some irregularities with property purchases made in your name. Nothing criminal, you understand, but the kind of paperwork errors that could take years and hundreds of thousands in legal fees to resolve. His pause was perfectly calculated. Unless, of course, we handle this quietly between family. Emma's eyes met mine across the kitchen. Family. The man who'd been using my identity to launder millions was calling us family. I'm listening. Excellent. I believe Eleanor may have left some business documents in her house that belong to me. If you could retrieve them, say, this evening, I could make those property issues disappear completely. In fact, I'd be happy to transfer the Cambridge duplex to your name legitimately. Consider it compensation for the inconvenience. $1.2 million, offered like a tip for running an errand. Agent Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Morrison was laying out his crimes beautifully for the recording. And if I refuse? Morrison's laugh was cold. David, you're a factory worker who suddenly owns $63 million in potentially illegal assets. The IRS audit alone would destroy you. But why think negatively? Help me tonight, and by tomorrow you'll be free to enjoy Eleanor's gift with no legal complications whatsoever. The threat was clear beneath the polite words. Cooperate or be destroyed by the very system he'd manipulated. I'll need to think about it. Of course. But David? Don't think too long. These kinds of problems have a way of escalating quickly. After he hung up, Rodriguez smiled grimly. Perfect. Morrison just confessed to property fraud, money laundering, and extortion on a federal recording. We have enough to arrest him tonight. Emma slid down from the counter. So it's over. The criminal case is just beginning, but yes, for you too, it's over. Morrison will be in custody before midnight. The properties purchased in your father's name will be seized as evidence, and your real inheritance will be released once the investigation concludes. Agent Rodriguez packed up her equipment while Emma and I sat in our suddenly quiet kitchen. Outside, our neighbors were coming home from their normal jobs to their normal problems, completely unaware that the modest house on Maple Street had just helped bring down a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise. Dad? Emma's voice was small, younger than her 19 years. I'm sorry about last night. About being angry when you told me about the money. I reached across the table and took her hand, the same hand that had counted $140 in tips just 24 hours ago. You had every right to be angry. I should have trusted you with the truth immediately. Even if I hadn't earned it yet. The question hung between us, loaded with everything we'd both learned about money, trust, and the complicated mathematics of family love. Emma, you earned my trust the day you were born. Everything else is just details. She squeezed my fingers, and for the first time in a week, her smile was completely genuine. So what happens now? Are we really rich? I thought about Eleanor's wine cellar, about college tuitions that would never be a burden, about the freedom to choose work based on passion rather than necessity. But mostly I thought about the young woman across from me who'd learned to fight for what she wanted even when she thought she had nothing. We're really rich, I confirmed. But more importantly, we're really us. Emma laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her since this all began. Good. Because I kind of like the us we turned out to be. Outside, Agent Rodriguez started her car and drove away into the ordinary Tuesday evening, leaving behind a father and daughter who discovered that the most valuable inheritance of all was learning they could trust each other with the truth, no matter how complicated it got.